the London flat.
Sorry, where were we?
I was saying that as far as I can see, everything's cracking up.
It's just that the telephone hasn't stopped since I've been back. And that was Richard, by the way.
Yeah, you've been away for almost a year.
He said he's coming over. Another crisis with Marion, I suppose.
Or Tommy.
Well, it's about Tommy, that's fine, because he is our child, after all. But why Richard thinks I should sort out his wife's problems?
He'll probably go when he sees me here.
No, it's me he dislikes, not you. But somehow his feelings about me get pushed off onto you.
Interesting you should say that. I think for a lot of people, you and I are practically interchangeable.
You've only just understood that.
Well, I certainly had it brought home to me while you were away.
I suppose because we both live the same sort of life. You're not getting married and so on. That's all they see.
Free women. They still define us in terms of relationships with men, even the best of them.
We do too, don't we?
Do we?
Well, it's awfully hard not to. Free. Do you know, when I was away, I was thinking about us, and I've decided that we're a completely new type of woman. We must be.
There is nothing new under the sun.
It was more like, there is nothing new under the sun.
That's Mrs. Marks to a T.
I'd never get away with a hackneyed portrayal like that for the stage.
But dear old Mother Sugar was the living cliché of a psychoanalyst.
But I never really knew why you stopped seeing her.
It was all that damned art all over the place.
Well, I thought it was rather classy.
Art. You could never get away from it with her.
Talking of which, have you written anything since I've been away?
Don't you start. No, I haven't.
I keep telling you, I'll never forgive you if you throw that talent away. And why? I simply don't understand.
How can I ever say why when you're always so bitter and accusing?
I can't talk to you while you're in this mood. Shall I make some tea while we wait for Richard?
I'd rather have a beer or something. I've been thinking I might very well take to drink later on.
You shouldn't make jokes, Anna. Not when you see what it does to people. Look at Marion. I wonder if she's been drinking while I've been away.
I can tell you she has, yes. She came to see me several times.
She came to see
That's
you?
what I was leading up to when I said you and I seemed to be interchangeable.
I suppose you're going to say Richard came to see you too.
Yes.
That's probably him now.
I say definitely.
Hello, Richard. Just come from a board meeting.
What's that supposed to mean?
You're wearing a suit and tie.
There's nothing wrong in looking smart.
It's Saturday.
I didn't know you had a visitor, Molly.
Anna isn't a visitor.
Actually, I came to discuss my son, not my wardrobe.
Oh, so he's just your son now?
He might as well be. He hasn't seen anything of you for a year.
Oh, how many more times? I left him in a comfortable house with money and everything organised.
Why don't you admit you had a whale of a good time junketing all over Europe without Tommy to tie you?
Of course I had a good time. Why shouldn't I?
You're his mother.
He's 20. He seemed perfectly happy to stay here.
I know, just lolling around. What's wrong with the boy? He's never passed an exam decently, and he turned down the chance of going to Oxford.
Oh, Richard.
What?
Oxford isn't everything.
Far from it.
What I'm saying is that the boy worries me. He really does.
He worries me too, and that's what we're going to discuss, isn't it?
I'm in a position to offer him, well, anything he likes, and he's simply not interested.
But that's his choice.
If you were doing anything constructive with your lot, it'd be different.
You always talk as if I were trying to set Tommy against you. But I've always encouraged him to get to know you.
Big of you.
Molly's always urged him to see more of you. I know she has, and so have I. And I think she'd like you to offer him a job.
Is that right, Molly?
If you'd give me a chance to say so, yes.
So, it's all settled.
Oh, obviously not, because Tommy has to agree.
Oh, God, we're back where we started. Molly, may I know why you now aren't against your precious son being mixed up with the hosts of Mammon?
Because I brought him up in such a way that he'll be all right.
So he can't be corrupted by me, you mean? And may I be permitted to ask how you maintain your extraordinary assurance about your values? Because they've taken quite a knock in the last 2 years, haven't they?
Oh, Richard.
It's all very well for you two to look at each other like that, but hasn't it occurred to you that the real trouble with Tommy is that he's been surrounded half his life with communists? Or so-called communists, only now they want to leave the party, or have left. Don't you think that might have had some effect?
Well, obviously.
You say obviously, just like that, with a shrug of your shoulders, but what price your precious values? Poor Tommy's been brought up on the glories of the Soviet fatherland. And now what? Russia's in the doghouse, and what price the comrades now? Most of them are having nervous breakdowns or making a lot of money, as far as I can make
If
out.
you're saying that one of Tommy's troubles is that he was brought up a socialist and it's not an easy time to be a socialist, well, of course we agree.
The royal we, the socialist we, or just the we of Anna and Molly? What astounds me, Molly, is your fantastic arrogance. I mean, what are you? A two-bit actress with a tiny part in a vulgar rep play called The Wings of Cupid.
We minor actresses don't get to choose the plays we're in. We have to be grateful for what we're offered. Besides, I've been travelling for a year and I'm broke.
So your assurance comes from bumming around. It certainly can't come from the work you do.
Please, both of you, aren't we supposed to be talking about Tommy?
What you say about me, Richard, may or may not be true, but where do you get your arrogance from? It's hardly surprising that I don't want Tommy to be a businessman. You're no advertisement for the life.
You can insult me if you like, but I make a good living.
Oh, come off it, Richard. How often have you dropped in to see me and sat there saying how empty and stupid your life is?
Molly.
Wait a minute, Anna. Richard says my life isn't up to much. Well, I agree with him. But what's his? He treats his wife like a housekeeper or a hostess, but never a human being. His boys are being put through Eton and Oxford and a lifetime in the little fish pond of the upper class without any choice.
When you finished, I'd like to say that Tommy came to see me, and I told him he should go and see you, Richard, and see if he couldn't do one of those expert jobs, not business. It's stupid to be just business, but something constructive, like the United Nations or UNESCO. He could get in through you, couldn't he?
Yes?
What did he say?
He said he wanted to be left alone to think.
Left alone to think. The trouble with Tommy is he's never been bullied.
Thank you.
And so he's never had any direction, drive, or ambition.
All right. See if you can find him something constructive. Then show it to Tommy and let him decide.
Thanks. I will. I know you both despise me, but why?
Why should we be impressed? You aren't even self-made, you just inherited it.
And thanks to you, they cut me off without a penny.
Me? You were already involved with the cause of Republican Spain when I met you. And you were delighted when your family cut you off, because they'd never taken you seriously before then. You took out a party card on the strength of it. It had nothing to do with me.
No. Funnily enough, our marriage lasted just as long as my ludicrous left-wing leanings.
And funnier still, your parents then found you a lucrative job in the city.
What's impressive about you? A mostly unemployed actress. And Anna, who once wrote a book.
If you're attacking us for the way we live again, all I can say is the less you say, the better with the way your private life is.
At least I preserve the forms.
Yes, darling, I know you do. And how is Marion? I'd love to know.
Richard is worried because Marion is such a problem to him.
Oh, that's nothing new. As we all know, Richard married beneath him. Oh, not socially, of course, he was careful not to do that. But, quote, she's a nice, ordinary woman, unquote. Meaning stupid.
Oh, what would they do, these men, without their stupid wives?
Oh, I simply can't think. When I really want to depress myself, I think of all the brilliant men I know, married to their stupid wives. Enough to break your heart, it really is. So there is stupid, ordinary Marion. And of course Richard was faithful to her, just as long as most men are. That is, until she went into the nursing home for her first baby.
Molly, there's no need to go that far back.
Oh, but you came straight over to me. You seem to think I'd fall into bed with you. Don't you remember?
It was 13 years ago.
Now, we free women know that the moment the wives of our men friends go into the nursing home, dear Tom, Dick and Harry come straight over. They always want to sleep with one of their wives' friends. God knows why. Only I wasn't having any, so I don't know who you went
What
to.
a shame you don't have a scene this big in the play you're in.
When the children were small, she never saw you. Except when she had to entertain your business friends and organise posh dinner parties and all that nonsense. But nothing for herself. Then a man did get interested in her, and she was naive enough to think he wouldn't mind. After all, you'd said often enough, why didn't you get yourself a lover when she complained of your girls? And so she had an affair, and all hell let loose. You couldn't stand it. You started threatening. Then he wanted to marry her and take the 3 children. Yes, he cared for her that much. But no, suddenly you got all moral and started rampaging like an Old Testament prophet.
He was too young for her. It wouldn't have lasted.
You created all kinds of jealous scenes until the moment she broke it off with him. Then once you had her safe, you lost interest and went back to the secretaries on the fancy divan in your big business office. And you think it's so unjust that Marion is unhappy and drinks more than is good for her. Or to be more precise, More than is good for the wife of a man in your position.
There's no need to make such bad theatre out of it.
Well, Anna, is there anything new since I left a year ago?
Richard came to ask me if I thought it was justified for him to send Marion away to some home or something, because she was such a bad influence on the children.
I don't see why it's so terrible. She's drinking really heavily, and it's bad for the boys. Christopher's 13 now, and he found her one night unconscious on the floor, tight as you like.
You were really thinking of sending her away?
What would you do? You talk as if I'm some sort of Bluebeard, but I've only had half a dozen unimportant affairs. So do most of the men I know who've been married any length of time. Their wives don't take to drink.
Perhaps it would have been better if you'd chosen a stupid and insensitive woman. Marion's 1,000 times better than you are.
You always take it for granted that women are much better than men. But it doesn't help me much. Marion trusts you. Please see her as soon as you can and talk to her.
Just what am I supposed to say?
I don't know. I don't care. Call me names if you like, but see if you can stop her drinking.
Me? Richard, why don't you do something?
I've tried. I've hidden the bottles. I've had
Why don't you try and make her feel you like her at least? Take her on holiday or something.
But there's a problem.
Which is?
One women never have to contend with. Purely physical.
Go on.
You wouldn't understand.
Oh, try us.
How to get an erection with a woman you've been married to for 15 years. That's right, laugh, make it worse.
Richard, it's emotional. You started sleeping around early on in your marriage because you had an emotional problem. It's nothing to do with physical.
No, easy for women.
No, it's not easy for women. But at least we've got more sense than to use words like physical and emotional as if they didn't connect.
Do you really think it's all my fault?
Yes.
You should have loved her.
Hello, Father.
Tommy?
And how is Marion?
Fine, very well indeed.
Good. Because when I met her for a cup of coffee yesterday, she seemed in a pretty bad way.
How long have you been standing outside the door?
Why? Have you three been discussing me as well?
As a matter of fact...
Of course not. No, we were just having a little catch-up.
Yes, Tommy, we have.
Oh, and I suppose she's been taking notes.
What are you talking about?
Tommy, please don't talk to Anna like that.
What's your proposition, Father?
It's not just my idea. Your mother and Anna agree with me.
So you've been discussing
He was talking about my notebooks. The past year without Molly had been very lonely. I felt the only way to save myself from cracking up was to separate things off from each other in different books. So far they had kept me sane, but what I hadn't taken into account was the effect they might have on Tommy. Try and listen. Try and say something to help Molly and Tommy. But the more I try to concentrate, the more my mind seems to fill up with the chaos of other people's words.
Like a walk. I became a psychotherapist because I believe many people are blocked deep within themselves, unable to create any longer.
The reason why we don't leave the party is that we can't bear to say goodbye to our ideals for a better world.
I expect to spend a great deal of my life.
I was thinking more of something like forbidden love.
Why don't you want to write another book?
Like a walk.
Don't believe in
What's your proposition,
I'm going to give you the
Father?
first.
It's not just my idea. Your mother and Anna agree with me.
And so you've been discussing me as well?
I am your mother.
I didn't mean you.
Or do you mean me?
Yes, Anna, who else?
It's just that you weren't looking directly at me.
I've noticed that about you. You need to be able to look people in the eye in business.
Oh, Richard.
It's me, I was miles away. But yes, I was part of the discussion about you, Tommy.
So, what we thought was...
I think I know. You've come to offer me a job, and I did think it over, as you suggested, Anna. But I think if you don't mind, Father, I'll turn it down.
Oh, Tommy.
You're being inconsistent, Mother. You know, it's not just a question of taking a job. It means I have to live like him.
What's so wrong with that?
I don't mean any criticism, Father. The thing is, Mother, you've brought me up to believe in certain things, and now you say I might as well go and take a job in Father's family business. Why?
You mean, why don't I offer you something better?
Perhaps there isn't anything better. I've been around listening to your friends for years now, and all of you seem to be in such a mess.
You're not wrong there, son.
Or think you are, even if you're not. I don't mind that, but it was an accident for you. You didn't say to yourselves at some point, I'm going to be a certain sort of person. I think that for both you and Anna, there was a moment when you said, and you were even surprised, oh, so I'm that sort of person, am I?
True, that's right.
Well, that's settled then. If you don't want to be like Molly and Anna, there's no alternative.
It's not that I wouldn't want to be, but I don't think I could. The thing is, one doesn't say Anna Wolfe the writer or Molly Jacobs the actress.
What?
People like Anna or Molly aren't just one thing, but several things, and you know they could change and be something different if they wanted to. I don't mean their characters would change, but that they haven't been set into a mould. But you'll never be different, Father. You'll always have to live the way you do now. Well, I don't want that for myself.
You might be very unhappy.
As if that's the worst thing to be. I wouldn't call you or Anna happy people, but at least you're much happier than my father. Let alone poor Marion.
Poor Marion? Poor Marion? Never mind Marion. What are you going to live on?
If Mother doesn't mind, I don't mind living off her for a bit.
It's not that I mind, Tommy.
After all, I hardly spend anything. But if I have to earn money, I can always be a teacher.
You'll find that a much more straightened way of life than what I'm offering you.
I don't think you understand what I'm trying to say.
I did. You're going to be some sort of coffee bar bum.
Oh, Richard.
That wasn't what he was saying.
You only think that, Father, because you only like people who have a lot of money.
Yes, and plenty of rich people become bums of one sort or another.
I might become a writer.
Oh, God.
Oh, Tommy, and after all that good advice I gave you.
You forget, Anna, I don't have all your complicated, arrogant ideas about writing.
What do you mean?
You've got whole books written for yourself that no one ever sees. Well, that's a sort of contempt.
You told me you hadn't written anything while I was away.
Tommy means my notebooks.
What notebooks?
You know I keep 4 notebooks. I've kept them for years, even while I shared the flat with you.
I never went poking around in your thing.
Oh, you must have seen them, Mother. It isn't exactly as if Anna hides them. They've got different coloured covers.
From what you said, I didn't think you were writing at all
I'm
these
not.
days.
There you are. Why do you say that?
Because they're only jottings. And I also remember telling you that I've been afflicted with an awful feeling of disgust, of futility. Perhaps I don't like the idea of poisoning other people with these emotions.
If Anna's been filling you with a disgust for the literary career, then I won't argue with her for once.
If you feel disgust, then you feel disgust. I pretend not to. But you are also talking about responsibility. People aren't taking responsibility for each other. You said most socialists had ceased to be a moral force because they wouldn't take moral responsibility. You said that, didn't you?
Yes.
And you write in those notebooks, saying what you think about life, and then you lock them away. That's not being responsible.
A very great number of people would say that it was irresponsible to spread disgust.
Just what has this got to do with anything?
Sorry, Father. What I really came in to say was, I'd like to go on doing nothing for a month or two. After all, it's costing much less than going to university as you wanted.
And money's not the point.
I think you'll find it is. When you've changed your mind, Tommy, ring me up.
I'll ring you in any case.
Good. Goodbye, son. Molly, Anna.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Would you mind if I went back up to my room?
You don't need my permission, Tommy.
Thanks. May I visit you again sometime, Anna?
Of course. I'm sorry if you think me arrogant.
Not you. Just your ideas about writing.
What about these notebooks, then? Can't you just turn them into a novel?
No.
Well, why not? If you wrote one novel, I don't see why you shouldn't write another.
Oh, I wasn't laughing at you.
You simply don't understand. It's always meant so much to me that you should produce something, even if I didn't.
You get so angry, I don't know where to begin.
Yes, I'm angry. I'm angry about all the people I know who fritter themselves away. It's not only you, it's lots of people.
You remember Ryan, the painter?
Of course.
Well, while you were away, there was an announcement in the paper. He said he'd never paint again because the world is so chaotic. Art is irrelevant. Does that mean anything to you?
No, and certainly not from you. I can't believe you haven't done anything while I was away.
It's been a bad year.
In what way?
Where to start? For one thing, I nearly had an affair with Richard.
Well, it must have been bad for you to even consider Richard.
Yes, as I said. Everything's cracking up. Richard's lot don't believe in anything. They remind me of the white people in Central Africa. They used to say cheerfully, the blacks will drive us into the sea in 50 years' time. In other words, we know what we're doing is wrong and we don't care. Only it's turned out to be a good deal shorter than 50 years.
So what exactly happened between you and Richard?
He took me out to a posh dinner. He had just bought a controlling interest in all the coat hangers in Europe or something like that. There were 4 tycoons and 4 popsies. I was one of the popsies.
I can just picture it.
I reverted to my most primitive communist phase. You remember, when one thinks all one has to do is to shoot the bastards.
Well, that's what we've always said. What's new?
It did rather bring it all home. And the way they treat their women. All quite unconscious, of course. My God, we might have moments of feeling bad about our lives, but how lucky we are our lot are at least half civilized.
And Richard?
He brought me home in his new Jaguar. I gave him coffee. He was all ready. I sat there and I thought, well, he's no worse than some of the morons I've slept with.
Oh, now, what's got into you?
Haven't you ever felt that awful moral what the hell does it matter type of exhaustion?
It's the way you talk to me. It's new.
If we lead what is known as free lives, that is lives like men, why shouldn't we use the same language?
So what happened with Richard?
Nothing. He drank the coffee and then said, oh, well, I suppose I'd better be getting home. He was obviously expecting me to say, oh, no, I can't bear you to leave, bloody complacent swine. They all are.
Now you're talking like a whore.
Oddly enough, it's only by the greatest effort I don't feel like one. Anyway, I said, good night, Richard. Then I waited, for the moment when they feel they have to pay you back for turning them down. And right on cue, he said, Anna, you should take more care of yourself. You're looking 10 years older than you should. You're getting positively wizened. So I said, but Richard, if I'd said to you, oh yes, do come to bed, at this very moment you'd be saying how beautiful I was. Well, surely the truth lies somewhere in between.
You must have been mad to have gone out with him in the first place.
Molly, I told you. I think I'm cracking up.
Oh, it's England. Coming back this time was worse than usual. I'd leave again tomorrow if it wasn't for Tommy. I mean, how can a country so full of screwed-up people be any good?
Talking of which, do you want to hear what the comrades have been up to?
No, I'm so sick of it all. I don't think I ever want to bother with them again.
But, Molly, we can't do that, surely. We were communists, or nearly communists, for years and years. We can't suddenly say, oh, well, I'm bored.
No, I don't care any more about the comrades. All the Americans who are over here for political reasons, I'm sick of them too. I met several of them in Rome. Bloody miserable lot they are.
So who did you meet who didn't make you sick?
Lots of people. Your friend, Mr. Mafflon, the African.
Of course I know. I was just thinking about him earlier.
Very interesting man. But he was leaving the next day.
He's in prison now, so I suppose by this time next year he'll be Prime Minister.
And what about you, Anna? Apart from Richard and Marion, who have you seen?
Michael came to see me.
How was that?
In some ways, it was as though we hadn't broken up 3 years ago, but we were still having an affair.
Well, that happens when you know each other so well. You were with him for 5 years.
But he was behaving as if I was an old drinking pal. Telling me about a friend of his who'd got a job in Ghana and taken his wife. His mistress had wanted to go too. Very difficult, these mistresses, said Michael, as though I would laugh along. Then he had the grace to look embarrassed, because he remembered that I'd been his mistress.
A lot of swine they all are.
Molly.
Well, you're right, they are.
I've been thinking. It's possible, that we made a mistake.
What, only one?
No, seriously. Both of us are dedicated to the idea that we are tough. Our marriages were failures, but we shrug and say too bad. A man ditches us, it's not important. We bring up kids without men, nothing to it, we say, we can cope. We spend years in the Communist Party, and then we say, we made a mistake. So what?
What are you getting at?
Don't you think it's possible that things can happen to us so bad that we never ever really get over them? Because I don't think I've ever really got over Michael. I think it's done for me.
Anna, you've got to get back to your writing.
Actually, I've got to go. Janet will be back from school.
Oh, how is she? Does she still love those jolly hockey stick stories, or has she grown out of them?
If anything, she's grown more into them.
Does she ever think about Michael?
I don't think so. He never made much of an effort with her.
Well, please, give her my love.
made my way back to my flat thinking of Michael and what had been and what now would never be between us, I did what I often did with distressing thoughts. Tried to distance myself from them by allowing Ella, the central character in my never-to-be-finished second novel, to narrate and shape the painful chatter in my head. Head down, Anna wills herself to step on every crack in the pavement and broods on old resentments. How Michael had badgered her to leave the security of Molly's flat and get one of her own a half-mile or so away. But no sooner had she moved than he started to distance himself from her, and then left for good. The rent was a good deal more than what she had paid Molly, and now Michael was gone, she was both broke and lonely. But as she lifted her eyes from the pavement to put her key in the lock, she remembered the silver lining. More space. Not only does she have a room of her own, but her notebooks have a trestle table all to themselves. As she unlocks the door, she decides that after she's made the tea and put Janet to bed, she's going to record every detail of her relationship with Michael and write him out of her system. Janet's going to her friend Mary's house after school, but I could come.
Well, say about 4:30? I know it's early, but I have to be at the theatre at 7.
Lovely. Something to look forward to.
Why, what are you doing today?
I'm trying to write about my relationship with Michael. Try and get it out of my system.
And into the bookshop?
No, Molly. It's only therapy, not a novel.
Oh. Will I be in it?
I expect so.
What will you call me?
Julia. I call myself Ella. And Michael becomes Paul. What's the matter?
Well, Julia and Ella are all right, but Michael wasn't really a Paul.
What was he?
Self-centered, lying bastard.
I'll see you later. The two women were friends, sharing a large flat.
Ella, if you're going out, would you have your bath now? I'd like a wallow when you're gone.
I'm not going. I don't feel like it.
You say you want to get married again, but how will you if you never meet anybody?
That's what I can't stand. I'm on the market again, so I have to go to parties.
You might as well, because it's not as if you're ever going to meet anyone at work.
It's an office party.
I thought you said it was at Dr. West's.
Yes, and he's invited everyone from the office.
Is he a real doctor?
Of course he is. Why?
Well, answering a woman's problem page seems an odd thing for a qualified doctor to spend his time doing.
He doesn't. He leaves that to me.
But I thought you had to write what he told you to.
Well, yes, dress it up and that. Oh, don't remind me. I'm really put off going now.
No, it won't just be an office party. He'll have invited lots of other people. Well, so will his wife, I expect.
Possibly, but what sort of people?
You'll never know if you don't go.
Here she is now, Ella at last.
Why don't you get Ella a drink, darling?
What would you like, my dear?
Scotch.
Oh, a scotch, eh? That's no Pimm's and lemonade or Babycham girl or Ella.
My husband's been telling us that you've been having another brush with him over the replies to the letters.
Has he?
Well, I said to him, it's very good of Ella to take so much time over these poor ladies.
It's my job, Mrs. West. I'm paid for it.
A large scotch?
I'm afraid that's far too much for...
Perhaps I could help you out. Let me introduce you to Dr. Taylor. Paul, please. Ella's my assistant at the magazine. How do you do? I've heard a lot about you.
Then I'm afraid you're at an advantage.
I'll go, dear. But perhaps you could make sure everyone's topped up?
Excuse me a moment. Should we sit down while there's still space on the sofa?
All right. But please, do have some of this whiskey.
please.
Why do I get the feeling that I've walked into a room where everyone was talking about me?
They were talking about the case that sparked off your argument with Dr. West.
The what? Oh, yes, you're a doctor too, so I suppose they're all cases to you.
So what are you going to do?
Do?
About this letter. Dear Dr. West, I feel I must write to you in desperation. I get rheumatism in my neck and head. It began when my husband passed over on 9th of March 1950 at 3 in the afternoon. Now I am frightened because I am alone in my flat, and what would happen if my rheumatism attacked all over and then I could not move for help? Look forward to your kind attention. Yours faithfully, Dorothy Brown. Mrs.
I can't believe he brought it home to entertain his guests.
He was asking my advice. He said he'd been engaged to write a medical column, not run an outpatients for neurotics.
So why was he asking you?
I'm a psychiatrist.
Ah, that sort of doctor.
You're as bad as him. He's always making jokes about me being a witch doctor. Anyway, what are you going to reply to Mrs. Brown?
Well, Dr. West wants to prescribe an ointment.
So he was saying.
What can I say? I can't say anything she really needs to hear, because what she really wanted was for Dr. West to turn up on her doorstep and rescue her like a knight on a white horse.
Of course.
And I can't say, dear Mrs. Brown, you haven't got rheumatism. You're lonely and neglected, and you're inventing symptoms to make a claim on the world so that someone will pay attention to you.
You can say that tactfully. You could suggest she make an effort to meet people, join some organisation, something like that.
You sound more like a social worker.
That is what I am in one sense.
Well, don't worry. I'm not going to tell you my troubles.
And I never give advice at parties.
Except to Widow Brown.
You're middle class, aren't you?
By origin? Why?
Just that I'm working class, so perhaps I know more about Widow Brown than you do.
I'm sure you do, but before you pigeonhole me, I would like to assure you that I haven't led a typical middle-class life.
Oh?
I've lived in hostels and worked in factories.
Is that for research?
Sorry?
Only they say you work for the magazine part-time and that you're really a writer.
Not a very successful one, hence the journalism.
Is that what you call it?
I know all it amounts to is answering the problem page and endless articles on getting and keeping a man. But I prefer to call it journalism.
And are you also working on a novel?
Yes.
What's it about?
A young man who commits suicide.
Huh? Tell me more.
Might it be a bit of a busman's holiday for you?
I enjoy holidays of any sort. Oh, I'm sorry, but you'll have to excuse me.
Something I said?
No, I've just seen the time. I have to go. I'm on call.
Well, it was nice to meet you.
Will you come for a drive tomorrow?
There you are, Paul. I'd like you to come and meet a friend of mine.
I'm so sorry, Mrs. West, but I've got to get back to the hospital. What do you say, Anna?
All right.
2 o'clock outside South Kent Tube.
Fine.
Fingers crossed it will be. The weather, I mean. Thank you for a lovely do, Mrs. West.
Oh, pleasure. So sorry you had to leave us so soon.
I know. I'm so sorry, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Such a nice man. Such a shame he has to work such long hours. Hardly sees his wife and 2 boys, but he absolutely adores them.
Did she really say that to me? Or did she just give me an old-fashioned look? Leave that. Come back to it another time. The next day, in the car.
You look very pleased with yourself.
It's getting out of London.
You hate it that much?
Oh, no, I like it. I mean, I like the way I live in it. But I hate this.
What?
Every town we've driven through has the same shops. It's all so ugly.
People live in it. Do you hate them as well?
In a way, yes. I hate what they put up with. It ought to be swept away, all of it.
But it's not going to be, you know. It's going to go on. And there'll be more chain shops and television aerials and respectable people. Now, that's what you mean, isn't it?
So you just accept it?
It's the times we live in. And things are better than they were.
You mean better in the sense of less unemployment and no one being hungry?
Yes. How can you not see it?
Well, on the surface, everything's fine, all quiet, tame and suburban, but underneath it's poisonous. It's full of hatred and envy and people being lonely.
That's true of any place that's reached a certain standard of living.
That doesn't make it any better.
Anything's better than a certain kind of fear.
You mean real poverty, and you mean, of course, that I'm not equipped to understand that.
Your idea of building the New Jerusalem would have the effect of killing a plant by suddenly moving it to the wrong kind of soil.
A continuity isn't necessarily right just because it is a continuity.
Yes, Ella, it is. Believe me, it is.
Let's get away from the villages where there isn't anything at all.
Yes, let's.
I always feel so inhibited writing about sex. Is that because it's still a taboo? Or is it because it always looks so silly?
He teased me afterwards, saying that I'd brought him there because I'd already decided I wanted him to make love to me, that I'd planned it.
Why didn't you want to then?
I remember thinking, Lord, he's not going to make a pass so soon. All the same, I was happy to let things take their course. But he's arranged it all. He even brought out a rug for the purpose. I suppose he's taken other women to that field and knew he would need one.
When are you seeing him again?
He's staying here tonight, if that's all right with you, Julia.
Well, of course you don't have to ask my permission. We're free women.
But?
I just hope you know what you're doing.
Very early on, Paul had suggested that I move out of Julia's flat. I knew, although I pretended not to, that he was threatened by my friendship with Julia. But her support was too important to me to let go of it lightly.
Look at us. Together a few months and we're like an old married couple.
What do you mean?
We're content to just hold hands in a park because we know we're going to go home and make love in bed tonight.
What's so wrong with that?
Ella, you know I'm already married.
You can't call it being married. You never see her.
We got married when we were 20. There should be a law against it. Well, you're very wise not to be married, Ella. Be sensible and stay that way.
Why? Because it suits you.
But as the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, I refused to think of our relationship as an affair. Because although technically he was still married to her, he was spending more time with me than with Muriel, his wife.
Ella, is everything all right?
Yes.
It's just that Paul didn't stay last night.
Well, technically, he's still married. He has to go home sometime.
What an extraordinary woman she must be. What's he said about her?
Only that they got married too young. And then he went off to the war. And when he came back, he felt a stranger to her. As far as I can make out, he's done nothing but have love affairs ever since.
It doesn't sound too good.
I know you're not so keen on him.
The first time I saw him, I thought he'd got a tight, miserable face.
But he has such energy. Energy isn't being miserable.
No, I suppose not.
You should hear the way he talks about his patients. He really cares.
Oh, he's paid to.
He cares about me, too.
But I didn't say he didn't.
He spends more time with me than his wife.
He might have more sex with you than his wife.
It's not just that. He spends hours helping me with Mrs. Brown.
Who?
Oh, it's a sort of code slang for the women who write to the magazine's problem page. He describes us both as boulder pushers.
Boulder pushers?
It's a phrase for what he sees as his own failure.
Oh, there's nothing misery likes better than company.
Molly, he isn't miserable.
So you keep saying.
Julia, I think I should move out.
Why?
I just...
It's him, isn't it? He wants you to.
I didn't say that.
No, he didn't have to. He's threatened by our friendship. I bet he makes cynical jokes about us being lesbians.
Please, don't be like that about it.
I haven't been like anything. I'm not the one who wants you to move out.
I'm sorry.
And, is he going to leave his wife? I didn't think so.
It's hardly the same. You and I aren't married.
No, but there's only one person making all the compromises in your relationship, and it's not him.
And so the two women no longer shared a flat and were no longer friends. In fact, they didn't speak to each other for what seemed to both of them like a very long time.
Come in, Anna. Come in.
How did the writing go? This is for you. A peace offering.
Well, what for?
I just got to the part where I'd left the flat when I had to come out and see you.
That wasn't your fault. It was Michael and his constant snide jokes about you and me being like a married couple.
I suppose we were, in a way.
What?
If being close means mutual confidence and shared experience, then I was closer to you than anyone. In some ways, that's what it felt like when I left here. A breakup of a marriage.
Well, in that case, let me assign you the husband's role. You open the wine while I set the table.
Would you like to say hello to Tommy before I go?
Well, he knew you were coming. I'd hoped he might join us for tea.
Is he angry with me?
No, I'm sure it's nothing to do with you. He seems to prefer to spend most of his time in his room brooding. Do you think that's healthy?
I think it's good for everyone to brood. If by that you mean thinking.
Yes. Oh, he is an adult. Perhaps I shouldn't interfere.
As I walked back to my flat, I dismissed all thoughts of Tommy and Molly and wondered if I'd time to finish the account of my relationship with Michael before Janet got home from her friend's house.
So, what do you think?
About what?
About how I should reply to this Mrs. Brown letter. Oh, Paul, what's the matter? What is it?
Nothing.
But you always help me with these.
What's the point? I deal with poor Mrs. Brown and those types of lonely women all day at the hospital. I can't do any good, not really. Ultimately, the boulder pushers don't really help anything.
You know you help them.
We only imagine we do. It's putting poultices on unnecessary misery. That's all psychiatry and welfare work is.
If you really felt like that, you wouldn't work so hard.
Ella, you're my mistress, not my wife. Why do you want me to share all the serious business of life with you?
Every night you lie in my bed and tell me everything. I might as well be your wife.
You're saying you want to be my wife?
Why do you sound so incredulous?
But you think we men might as well just resign from life.
What do you mean?
My dear Ella, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, they're nothing at all. The real revolution of our time is women against men. Oh, but of course you know that because that's what your novel is all about.
No, it isn't.
What's the matter with you? You never seem to laugh anymore.
I don't seem to have much to laugh at.
Something happened at hospital lecture today that would have amused you.
What?
The professor announced that his paper was on the orgasm in the female swan.
Oh, I'm not sure I want to hear this.
I knew you were going to disapprove, but hold on. He announced that he had conclusively proved that female swans do not have an orgasm, and he would use this useful scientific discovery as a basis for a short discussion on the nature of the female orgasm in general.
I hope everyone laughed.
No one said a word, but there was a disturbance in the hall of people getting up to leave.
People?
You guessed it. All the women. There were about 50 men and about 15 women. And every one of those lady doctors had got up and were going out as if they'd been given an order. And you'll be pleased to know that at that point I committed an act of disloyalty to my sex and followed the women out of the hall and thought I'd go to the canteen and have a coffee with my friend Stephanie.
Stephanie? How long have you known her?
Ages. She's a really old friend. Anyway, I asked her why she'd walked out of the lecture. She smiled at me, very hostile, but with great sweetness, and said, "But my dear Paul, women of any sense know better after all these centuries than to interrupt when men start talking about sex." It took me half an hour and 3 cups of coffee to get her to like me again. Yes, well, don't be angry with me too, just because I'm the same sex as the professor.
I'm not angry.
No, you're amazing. You're the least jealous woman I've ever known.
Am I?
I had decided that thinking about Stephanie, of what her relationship might be with Paul, was too painful. I shut the door on suspicions and willed myself to believe she could easily have been a really old friend. Just one he'd never mentioned before.
So are you staying here tonight?
Yes, I think I will. Give me one of those letters. Let's see if we can't finish them before we go to bed.
I'm afraid they're all from dull little housewives with straying husbands.
No change there, then. Wonder how you and Stephanie would get on. All right, what does this one say? Dear Dr. West.
Paul, is there something you're not telling me?
It's serious.
What is?
The letter. I don't think her symptoms are psychological. I think she might have VD. You must get Dr. West to write back to her straight away.
All right, I will do. I've got some supper. It won't take long, if you'd like it.
You're such a good cook. What am I going to do with you, Ella?
What you're doing now.
I've been offered a job in Nigeria.
Nigeria?
Yeah, they're always trying to recruit people, but...
I could come with you, I could. What have I got to keep me here?
You have your work.
Oh, you know full well I hate the job at the magazine, and a writer can write anywhere.
But what about all your friends?
They're more acquaintances than friends.
Julia?
Oh, Julia's barely spoken to me since I moved out of her house. I can come with you, can't I?
But you don't want to give up all your exciting literary goings-on in London.
Oh, I do. Going with you to Nigeria is the best thing that could happen as far as I'm concerned.
Let's not talk about it now, eh? Let's have some supper and an early night.
I didn't see him so much over the next couple of weeks. He told me he was busy at work, and again I chose to believe him. One evening he came round, and after we'd eaten, he said he wanted me to come back with him to his house to collect a clean shirt, so that he wouldn't have to get up early in the morning to do it. His wife and children were away, so there was no chance of bumping into them, but I'd never had any desire to see his house. Why did I agree to go? Why do we do these things at the end of something? Because we're desperate to pretend for as long as possible that all is well, I suppose.
What's the matter?
Paul, it's your home. In all the 5 years we've known each other, you've never brought me here.
I thought you'd like to see it.
I'll wait outside.
I can't leave you standing in the front garden. Come on.
Oh, you didn't tell me she read this.
What?
The magazine. It's the one I work for with Dr. West.
So?
Oh, come on, you despise it too.
This is her house, Ella, to do as she likes in. It's surely the least I can do. My clothes are upstairs.
Days, Dr. West will hand me a letter and it'll say, "Dear Dr. West, please tell me what to do. Lately I can't sleep at nights. I've been drinking hot milk before going to bed and trying to keep a relaxed mind, but it doesn't help. Please advise me. Mrs. Muriel Tanner. P.S. I forgot to mention my husband wakes me early, about 6 o'clock, coming in from working late at the hospital. Sometimes he doesn't come home all week. I get low in my spirits. This has been going on for 5 years now."
You know that I'm not proud of myself as a husband.
For God's sake, why don't you put an end to it then?
What? Abandon the poor woman with 2 children?
She might get herself a man who cared for her. Oh, don't tell me you'd mind if she did. Surely you don't like the idea of her living like this?
I've told you before, she's a very simple woman. You always assume that other people are like you. Well, they aren't. She likes looking after her children, watching television and reading women's magazines.
Can we go now?
Yes, I think I've got everything I need. What you don't like is that Muriel might be happier living like this.
How can she be?
I asked her some time ago if she'd like to leave me. She said no. Besides, she'd be lost without me.
She never sees you.
She depends on me completely, and I'm nothing if not efficient. When I go home, I deal with everything. The gas heaters, the electricity bill, and where to buy cheap carpet, what to do about the children's school, everything. I've told you before, Ella, you're a snob. You can't stand the fact that maybe it's how she likes to live.
No, I can't, and I don't believe it. No woman in the world wants to live without love.
You're such an idealist. But for all you know, Muriel might just as well say of you, why on earth does she put up with being my husband's mistress? What security is there in that? And it's not respectable.
Oh, security.
Quite so. You say scornfully, oh, security. Oh, respectability. But Muriel wouldn't. They're very important to her. They're very important to most people.
You should never have brought me here.
Come on then, let's go. It might do you good to be more like other women.
What do you mean?
Waiting at home, the wife, trying to keep your man from straying instead of having a lover at your feet.
Oh, is that where you are?
Ella, I don't want to argue like this.
Nor do I, Paul, but sometimes you seem so cut off.
I'm sorry. I really don't know how I'd have got through the last few months without you.
What's happened particularly in the last few months?
Nothing. That's the point. It goes on and on, boulder pushing, feeling useless. At least in Nigeria, I'll be working for something new and growing.
Have you been accepted?
Yes.
Oh. When were you going to tell me?
I just have.
When do you go?
Next week.
Next week?
Don't look like that. I've been talking to you about it for months.
Yes, but it's something distant. Something in the future.
After he left, I felt frightened. Terrified that I had lost something so important I would disintegrate. I tried to hold myself together by writing down my day. It was as if I, Anna, were trying to nail myself to the page. Every day I shaped this person.
Anna. Today I got up at 7, cooked breakfast for Janet, walked her to school, went to work, etc., etc.
And felt as if I had saved that day from chaos. The loneliness ate away at me. One Monday, I walked out of work, and I knew there was only one person in the world I could talk to about it.
Long time no see.
Julia, I'm sorry.
Ella, what's happened?
Paul's left.
When?
Weeks ago.
Why didn't you?
You haven't spoken to me since I moved out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come in, come in.
I fooled myself that I was coping, but then today I walked out of work.
Why?
Dr. West told me he'd got a letter from Paul.
Dr. West?
Yes. He said Paul was liking it out there and was thinking of bringing his family over.
I suppose that's the sort of thing Paul would say to Dr. West.
Yes, but then he leaned towards me so I could feel his breath on my face and said he thought it was just as well Paul had gone because he told Dr. West that he got himself heavily involved with some flighty piece who was no good for him.
Do you think old West knew the flighty piece was you?
Oh, yes. You know, a couple of months ago, he let slip that his wife was away and tried to persuade me to go out to dinner with him.
Dr. West? What did you say?
Oh, I made some excuse or another.
To spare his feelings?
No, to keep my job. I don't believe he has any feelings. Not healthy ones, anyway. Julia, I'm so bitter, I think I am poisoned by it. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought anything of it.
Of what?
Oh, married but temporarily wifeless men trying to have an affair with me. It was all part of the hazards of being a free woman.
So? Nothing's changed.
I have. I used to feel a satisfaction. A victory over the wives because I was the free woman. Much more exciting than the dull tied woman. And now when I look back and acknowledge that emotion, I feel...
What?
Ashamed. I feel thoroughly ashamed.
Mum, I'm home.
Oh, did you have a nice time?
Yes, Mary's brothers have got one of those pedal cars, but theirs have doors that open, so you can get in properly like a real car. And they let us have a go in them. What have you been doing?
Oh, nothing much.
Oh, you've been writing.
Only in the notebooks.
When you're ready for bed. Now go and have a bath and get your pajamas on.
What are you doing?
I'm writing about a meeting I had today. But I'll have finished by the time you're out of the bath.
I'm
absolutely delighted you finally agreed to have lunch, Miss Wolfe.
I must admit that the thought of seeing the title of my book on the front of a cinema gives me a certain thrill.
As it should, as it should. But I'm not sure that the title Frontiers of War is quite alluring enough for today's audience.
No.
I was thinking more of something like Forbidden Love.
Really? And what other changes are you proposing to make?
Me? None. None at all. I would not presume with such an immensely talented author such as yourself to tamper with the work. I think the way you've portrayed the essential tragedy of the colonial situation in Africa is superb. But I think you have slightly, not intentionally I'm sure, over-romanticised the colours. But you might actually want to bring out how sensitive, how full of true sensibility the Englishman is. He is often far more intuitive than any woman, wouldn't you agree?
Not entirely. And I have to say, I don't think I've over-romanticised.
Right. Let's just say you have erred on the side of generosity with regards to, what's his name's? The black politician's intelligence.
He's based on a real person, Tom Mathlong, who's in prison for his beliefs and who is, if anything, more intelligent than I've managed to portray.
I'm not saying you need to rewrite him. Just perhaps make our people more kind and altruistic. More realistic.
Mummy, I finished.
Me too.
Are you going out tonight?
No. Now, hop into bed.
Is anyone coming round?
No. Why do you ask?
You've got your best skirt on.
Oh. It was for the meeting. I had lunch with someone who wants to buy the film rights to my book.
Oh, good. Does that mean we'll have lots of money?
I'm afraid not. I couldn't agree with what he wanted to do. Now, come on.
Snuggle down.
That'll be Molly, and you'll be talking for hours and hours.
Shush.
Anna, it's me.
How are you?
Is Tommy with you?
No. Well, should he be?
Oh, I just wondered. If he knew I was worried, he'd be furious, of course.
How is he?
The same as he's been for the past few weeks, sitting in his room on his own for hours on end. Are you going out later?
No.
It's just that I've got to dash to the theatre, late as it is. Please, would you telephone him here in about half an hour?
Molly, what's worrying you?
Richard rang this morning insisting that Tommy go to see him. And he went, just like that.
Have you rung Richard to find out what happened?
He phoned about 3 hours ago, ever so sarcastic and superior, saying I didn't understand Tommy.
Tommy was still there?
No, according to Richard, he'd just left. But he still hasn't come home. I've just been up to his room, and he's got half a dozen books on psychology from the library on his bed. He's been reading them all at once from the looks of it. I must rush, Anna. You will ring, won't you?
Yes, but... There. That was hardly hours and hours, was it? Sleep tight. Oh, damn. Hello?
I've just had a phone call from Marion. Can you believe it? Tommy went down to see her. He stayed 20 minutes and left again. She said he was very quiet. Anna, don't you think it's odd?
What did Marion mean by he was very quiet?
Who knows? She was drunk again. She was going on and on about Richard and that girl in his office. She probably went on to Tommy about them too.
Anything else?
I didn't give her the time to talk about anything else. I'm really late now. Oh, she was also going on about you and Richard.
How many more times? We didn't do anything.
I know. I'm terrified, Anna. Something awful is happening, I'm sure of it. Oh, God, I don't know what to do. And I must fly. I'll have to take a taxi now. Goodbye.
Mummy?
What is it?
I told you you'd be on the phone all night.
Well, I'm going to go into the living room now to read a book, and I'll try and be as quiet as a mouse.
What was that?
Oh, I expect downstairs cat has got in again and knocked something over.
I'll come with you.
No, sweetheart, you stay here. Who's there?
It's me. Anna, I need...
You gave me a fright.
Sorry.
How did you get in?
Your downstairs neighbour. He was just going out as I arrived.
What's happened?
Nothing.
I hear you went to see your father.
Oh, yes. He said that his firm is building a dam in Ghana, and would I like to take a job there, looking after the Africans' welfare work.
And you said?
I didn't see the point of looking after his cheap labour for him. He said I was reacting the way I did because of the influence of the Communist Party.
He means your mother and me.
Does he? Well, he thinks I'm suffering from paralysis of the will.
Richard actually used those words.
Well, no, but it's what he meant. What he actually said was that because everyone's got used to the idea of whole countries changing completely in about 3 years, like China or Russia, if they can't see a complete change ahead, they can't be bothered. Do you think that's true?
Partly. It's certainly true of the people who've been inside the communist myth.
Not so long ago you were a communist. Now you use words like communist myth.
Sometimes I get the impression that you blame me and your mother and the rest of us for still not being communists.
I can remember when you used to be so active, always rushing around doing things.
Do you mean any activity is better than none?
No, I did not mean that. You know I didn't mean that. But why is everything you say a question?
Tommy, would you like to sit down? Or can I get you something to eat?
You see, why do you have 4 notebooks?
I don't really know. Makes things less complicated, messy, I suppose.
And what's the difference between them?
There's a red one, a blue one.
Yes, I know they've got different coloured covers. I'm not a child.
The red one's concerned with politics. I've told you this.
I know, I just wanted to go over it again.
I try to make stories out of my experiences in the yellow one. The blue one is where I try and record only facts. And the black notebook is to do with me, the writer.
Really? Seems more to do with your depression.
Have you been reading it?
Do you mind?
No.
Why are you depressed?
I don't know that I am.
Do you think that it's because your life doesn't have any structure, and that you can't find any purpose to it?
My life has plenty of structure. Getting Janet up and ready for school, shopping for food, being here when she gets back, cooking.
You would be the first to criticise a woman who defined herself solely as a mother.
Tommy, what is all this about?
I think you need to find something to do. Something that will make a difference in the world, like writing a book.
I don't share your optimism about it making a difference.
It would to you.
Is that a fact?
Or maybe you'll quote me in the blue notebook. That's for facts, isn't it?
Tommy, please. Please, put it back.
March the 8th, 1950. Tommy came into the kitchen on purpose to quarrel.
That was years ago. Well, you could only have been 14 or 15.
He's been in a mood of hostility since his first visit to his father's house. He has started to criticise his mother for being a communist and a bohemian. Last week, for the first time, I intervened and told him about the way his father bullied Molly financially to make her go back to him, then the threats to tell her employers that she was a communist, the whole ugly story. I think Tommy believed me, but it didn't help.
Tommy, I didn't write that for you, or anyone else for that matter, to read.
No, but it's true.
How much of them have you read?
Enough to know that you aren't even honest enough to let yourself be what you are. Everything's divided and split off.
Tommy, I don't understand what's the matter. What are you accusing me of?
If things are chaos, then that's what they are. I don't think there's a pattern anywhere. You're just making patterns out of cowardice. I think people aren't good at all. We aren't any better than animals. We just pretend to be.
Well, there's nothing I can say to that, is there?
I'm going to give you another chance, Anna.
What? What do you mean?
Tell me, if you don't believe in the communist myth, what do you live by now?
I suppose if people can imagine, there'll come a time when they'll achieve it.
Imagine what? Achieve what?
What you said. Goodness. Kindness. The end of being animals.
And for us now, what is there?
Keeping the dream alive, because there'll always be new people without paralysis of the will.
That'll be my mother checking on my mood of hostility.
42683. Yes? No. It wasn't your mother. But I am expecting a visitor.
Then I must go and allow you to get on with keeping the dream alive.
No, there's no need to go.
Thank you for talking to me.
Tommy, Molly, it's Anna.
Just as a minute got in.
Tommy's been here and he's just left. He frightens me.
There's something terribly wrong, but I don't know what, and I don't think I said the right things.
What did he say?
It all seemed to boil down to everything being rotten.
Well, it is.
Oh, and now Marion's just telephoned me from a phone box. She's come up by the last train to see me.
What on earth for?
I don't know. She's drunk. Molly, we have to do something for Tommy, quickly.
I'll talk to him. Oh, I can hear your doorbell.
That'll be her.
Hello, it's just me, Marion.
I'll report on Tommy's morale in the morning.
Bonsoir. May I come in?
You're already in, Marion.
Such a pretty room. And here you are, free to do as you like in it. How wonderful.
Marion, let me put you to bed. We can talk in the morning.
You think I'm drunk?
Of course you are. It doesn't matter. You should go to sleep.
And how is Richard?
Well, surely, Marion, you're more likely to know that than I am.
I'm not jealous of you.
Good, because whatever Richard might have told you, it's not true.
Not that it makes much difference. Why not you when there's been so many? But I am envious of you. You are what I want to be. You're free, and you have lovers, and you do as you like.
I'm not free. I don't like living like this. Why don't you just go to bed?
But I hate going to bed. Once it was the happiest time of my life when I was first married. Sometimes Richard sleeps with me, but he has to make himself. Have you ever had to sleep with a man when you know he's making himself?
Yes, it was like that when I was married.
Yes, but you left him. Good for you. Did you know a man fell in love with me not so very long ago?
Yes, I do.
He wanted to marry me and take the children too, but Richard... Oh, that would be one of your lovers, I suppose.
Do you?
Perhaps it's Richard.
Marion, how many more times?
If it is, tell him I'm here. Tell him I'm on to him.
Marion, please, go to sleep in here. Marion! Oh, hello.
Anna.
What is it?
Tommy's killed himself.
Molly.
He shot himself.
What?
Yes, he came in after you rang. He went upstairs without saying anything. And I heard a bang, but I thought at first he'd slammed his door shut. I didn't even know he had a gun. He's not dead, but they think he's going to die. I can tell from what the ambulance men say. Anna, they think he's going to die.